Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Our topic today is Sage Service Operations with presenter Bob Sandlins from Accord & Company. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone's in listen-only mode, so if you do have a question, please type it into the questions box on the screen, and we will address them at the end of the session. This webinar will be recorded, and we will email out a copy to everyone later today. I will now turn it over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Krista. Good morning, everyone, and thanks again for joining us to preview Sage Service Operations. Again, my name is Bob Sandlins, and we have about 30 minutes together. So I will keep this somewhat high level, but hoping that through some Q&A, you'll throw out some questions that perhaps we can go deeper in at the conclusion of our session together. We'll also put my contact information again at the very end of the session. So if you have some immediate questions, please feel free to reach out. So let's jump in. For those of you that don't know Accord or haven't worked with us recently, again, our firm specializes in working with construction and real estate companies. We serve now more than 4,000 clients with a staff of 25 Sage certified consultants. Before we jump in to the product, and we're going to spend most of our session together in the actual product on the web. But before we jump in, I just wanted to introduce a couple high-level concepts about what Sage Service Operations is and how it relates to the existing products that you may have in place today. So Sage Service Operations, AKA, and I'll refer it in our session today as SSO, Sage Service Operations. This diagram that you're looking at, notice that the center of the diagram we list or show Sage 100 Contractor and Sage 300 CRE. So those are the core financial accounting applications. Both products offer a back office service management application to manage schedules and invoice service work orders. In this webinar, we're going to demonstrate how to extend the functionality that you could have in play today to the web using field mobile devices like phones and tablets. So this graphic shows the primary elements of what's in SSO. So we will manage work orders and quotes, track schedules, and through a dispatch board, monitor who is where and what's coming up. And then third, as an option, many of our real estate clients will add, and many contractors too, where they want a more client-facing interface where the web portal would serve as a place where clients could put, or tenants could put service requests in. And it's also a place where they could view all of their site information, existing status of work orders, and perhaps even retrieve invoices. So SSO is a true web extension of 100 and 300. All data collected in SSO on mobile devices updates Sage 100 and 300 real time. So there's no database syncing needed. There's no, at the end of the day, let's update the database. As entries are made on a phone, perhaps recording time or materials or issuing a purchase order, the back office or anyone that's inside of Sage will see the transactions post automatically. So what is responsive design? Well, it really is about the user interface experience based on the device they're connecting to. So we'll start this session out from a desktop computer, which I'll display. And then as we roll through different functions, particularly when we look at assignments or a specific work order, I'll shrink the screen so you can see what the experience would be by a field technician or user and how they would interface with the software. This product works with Android, Apple, or any Windows device. So by this list, you can see we have a lot of capabilities today in SSO, from managing work orders, scheduling and dispatching, though that is in Sage 100 and 300. Most of our clients that have moved to adding the SSO as a product have moved their scheduling and dispatching out to the web. Customers can, or technicians, or anyone can look at customer site and equipment history. Obviously, we have a preventive maintenance capability. You, even if you elect to, could have a technician create a purchase order out in the field, obviously track inventory list, code materials to a work order on a mobile device. It's updating inventory, depleting inventory, and obviously posting that as an expense to the ticket. But photos, sketches, attachments are commonly used. SSO obviously captures time. That time can be used to pass right into payroll, obviously through a review and approval process first. And we have quote capabilities, form capabilities, and most important, obviously collecting signatures, both from your tenant, customer, or even your technician if required. By the way, SSO Security Administration allows you to enable any one of these tasks by user. So it's not generic where everybody's going to see everything on this list. It'll be provisioned based on your company's workflow, the organization's requirements, and then specific to the technician using the software. So it's not just the field that benefits by implementing a mobile technology. The office spends a lot less time on service-related task work. Savings result from eliminating double entry of all the completed work on tickets coming back from the field, automating billing, if you choose to. Most companies elect to. Capturing time, capturing POs that are created in the field, and obviously material allocations and other items. Also, big benefit for the office, no more manual filing or scanning of completed work orders. Most important, your customers will get more accurate and timely information on service request. So without further ado, let's jump into the software. And we're going to start in reviewing Sage Service Operations at the service dashboard. Now, real quick, before we jump in, notice on the left-hand side of your screen, rolling down some of the features that I have turned on for my use of the software. And yes, for those of you that are using job cost as well, this is the start of a component called Sage Field Operations. We won't talk about that today, but there are capabilities now being added that will allow those that are using our job cost module to collect time or collect field reports or soon RFIs and change requests as well. We're going to focus today just on the service and the dispatch side. So by way of introduction again, the service dashboard is really one central place to monitor all your service department activity with customizable views and grids. So the data that's presented here can be customized based on your settings. One interesting difference with Sage Service Operations, or SSO, and your back office service is that this is highly customizable in an easy way, as well more interactive. So an example would be, if you notice this open work orders pie chart, if I click on, let's say, just one of these sections, let's say electrical, you're drilling into all of the open calls that are tagged as with a call type called electrical. Notice that from here, with one click, you could click and open up the work order through a hyperlink, or over to the right, you could actually open up the customer site and have full visibility to everything that's happening at that customer site. Excuse me. We're going to dig into some of those details when we progress a little further here. So if you click on recently completed work orders, what should you see? But all the open work orders. I'm sorry, in this case, completed work orders. And again, with hyperlinks to the site or to the work order. So just for fun, let's click on Allstate University from this open or this completed work orders list. And now you're looking at all of the data that's been captured on that site. So notice that we've got work orders, equipment, quotes that are open or active, notes and forms and agreements, and refrigerants that turned on, and related attachments. So we'll come back into this more from a technician's perspective when they're out in the field on a work order. So let's, one more thing while we're here. Do you notice a little question mark up in the right-hand corner? This is a great way to look for information, and this is everywhere in SSO. So let's say you wanted to know something about Allstate. As you start typing in Allstate, it will look at your customer or site list and then display everything that obviously is ALLST as I typed, and it pulls me right into Allstate. Let's go back. Let's do a second search. This time, let's do a search on a work order, and let me just start typing in work order 23. You notice, by the way, when I typed in work order, now I'm going to see all the work orders. If we were to instead type in 23160, notice it goes right to that work order. So you'll find that everywhere in the software. You might want to type on an address or a call type or a customer piece of equipment. You can search universally through the application. So let's move into, so that's the dashboard. And again, that would be typically used by someone in a management role looking or monitoring activity around the service department. Let's jump into actual scheduling through, and obviously dispatching. So we're going to take a look at the schedule board. In opening up the schedule board, notice what is on the left side of your screen. This is an open list, or a list of all the open work orders. Now, at this present filter, I'm not filtering that open list by any kind of categorization. You could by simply just clicking on the filter and saying, hey, only show plumbing related work orders. So now you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 open plumbing work orders. So when we implement Sage 300, 100, the service applications, there are call types and call problems. Those extend right out to the web, just allowing you, when you're looking at a schedule board like this, to filter. Notice that as well, we have centers for different divisions. You can filter on zones, on priorities, on employees, i.e. techs, or specific site, every work order at a specific customer, or every work order with a certain status. So a lot of flexibility in how this is presented to you on the left side, as well as the columns. I've just got 3 columns turned on. So I'm reapplying that filter, opening it up to display all. Notice on the right side, it's a schedule board, and I've set week as my favorite. Yours could be 2 weeks. Some companies like to just monitor day by day. Now notice if I'm on today, now we've got the time across the board, as opposed to on a week, we're just stacking up work orders per tech. This really lays it out as to what's happening in what sequence today. Notice that up top on the right, these controls allow you just to roll days. So here's what's happening tomorrow. Here's what's happening Thursday. If you wanted to see it that granular by time slot. So depending on how you schedule or dispatch, the view orientation might need to be different. So we'll go through all the iterations there. Let's look at one other option here that a lot of companies will use. Notice I happen to have a custom group I call BD, and it displays my resources. If your organization has multiple types of service-related activities and you want to group those by group type, notice I picked mechanical, and now I'm only looking at those resources that are mechanical or plumbing. So the view will change based on the status that you're selecting. Now, in your case, you might just have 1, or somebody on this call might have 10, totally up to you. And that can default by user. So that's a little bit about scheduling. Real quick, before we move on and just kind of live in the day of a work order and how this application works for somebody out in the field, just know that as calls are taken, it's 1 click on the right. And we're going to go create a work order in a minute. But from here, obviously 1 click, we can open up and create a work order in a little simple wizard. When the work order is captured, if it's not assigned to a resource, you have the ability just to obviously leave it unassigned. It would show in this list, and then you can drag and drop it over to a resource. And that's as simple as it is to schedule a work order to a resource. Now notice one other if you see different colors represented on the work orders on my screen. That's because there's an option for you, and you don't have to use this, but we can timestamp every single activity on a work order. So we can track, obviously, when the call was taken or when it was requested through a web portal. And then as that call is dispatched to a service resource, we'll track that, as well as acknowledgments, perhaps no answer, traveling, starting, completing, and updating. Now I'm going to go through a couple of these when we start the work order. But this is a convenient way just to track what's going on with respect to activity, either for the day or for the week. So with that in mind, and I'm just touching on the highlights again of this, let's jump into individual assignments for a resource. So to do that, I'm logged in as a super user, but so I can see all of this. Somebody else might log in and only see perhaps assignments like this. So these happen to be assignments assigned to the resource I'm allocated as. Now, I mentioned earlier responsive design. Responsive design, if you notice, I'm on a laptop or a desktop right now, so it's showing full screen. When we open up a work order and we go smaller screen, watch what happens to the design layout here. So it will automatically shrink. Well, maybe not as apparent because you're not familiar with all of the fields that are enabled on that previous screen, but it just did hide a lot of information to make the viewing of this data simpler. Let me show you another example. So if we open up this work order on my desktop, you're going to see it opens up full screen with the ability to see a lot of information all in one view. If we were to make this small again, more like a tablet or a phone, you'll see that the orientation is very different. This makes it simple to use when a tech opens up his or her list of work orders. They're going to see a real simple list on their phone. They'll tap on it, opening up the work order, then they're here. And we'll get into this in just a few minutes. Let's go back for a minute. Just going to go back to where we were, listing all of my assignments. Now, these are my assignments for the day. If I wanted to see what happened yesterday, everything that gets done and as they're completed always stay on the day in which they were assigned and completed. So we can roll. If my preference is to see the whole week that I have in every assignment, just click that little button over to the right, it toggles from day to week. Now we're looking at Monday's activity, today's, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. And obviously we could roll from week to week if necessary as well. So let's go back to the day. And I'll just double click that. And let's open or create a work order. And then let's go through what your field techs will see and how they'll interact with the software. So to do that, just click the little plus right there on the right, top right of the screen. Click work order. And let's go ahead and pick a site. Now, so in Sage, the back office, you have customers that are set up in accounts receivable. The service application lets you establish sites. So the parent is the customer, the child is the site. So when you're looking at a site lookup, we can search by customer, but we can also search, in this case, just by site. So I'm opening up Allstate, and it's at 1818 Portland Avenue. So choosing that site automatically inserts all of the information. I happen to be using centers, so it's defaulting that. I'm going to skip some of these fields for right now. If there was equipment at that location, I could click that down arrow and it would list all the equipment at the location. If there's a purchase order the customer is requiring that we note on our invoicing, record that, or you can record it later. Problem codes, service types, these are defined by you as what's relevant. Now, there's a lot of reporting. There are rate tables established behind that. There's skill checking. There's other capabilities that are beyond just a description here that will mean something in your workflow. Obviously, we could note the status or priority. These are assigned fixed up front in the software. I'm going to go ahead and assign it to me. I'll put this time on it, and I'll just say no power. So we just generated a work order together, choosing a couple fields. This description, by the way, is usually documenting all of the content of what the customer is complaining about or the issues, so that could be as long as needed. Notice on the bottom, I've turned some custom fields on. That's up to you, whether they're relevant. And that could be part of your workflow or inform control. So just click Generate Work Order, and we just created a third work order assigned to me for the day. Now, again, normally the calls would come in, they'd go to a list, you'd through the schedule board, you'd assign it to somebody. So here's that third call that we just captured a minute ago with no power. So let's go open up a work order, but this time let's do it from a mobile device perspective. So we're going to do it like this. So again, as a tech would log in, they're going to see that list we just looked at full screen in a very simple format like this. Again, next is just looking at rolling days. So it's a tap with their finger. They could just click on 23258, hyperlink right to the work order, and it's going to open up with those boxes, which we're going to do in a minute. There's another option. Some of our techs, we find, like just clicking or tapping on that down arrow, and from there they can add notes, hours, items perhaps that are not material items in a database or parts. So we're going to go full screen for a minute, full screen on a tablet or on a phone, just by clicking on the work order. Oh, one more. When they're here, a lot of customers like the ability for the field tech to actually, with one click, open up the site. So if we tap on the hyperlink 23258, that's opening up that specific work order. If they tap on, let's say, the site, Horner Laboratories in this case, now I'm opening up that same visual, very simple, listing work orders, equipment, quotes, agreements that might be related to that site, and all the related attachments and any forms that we have. So a very simple way, and by the way, if we go into equipment, we can not only see the equipment, but if you tap on the actual equipment item, we can see all the service repair history on that specific piece of equipment at that site. So great visibility into data that typically before was a phone call between the field tech and the office. Now they have full access to that if you provision that to them. So let's jump into the work order, 23258. And again, we're going to go in more of a tablet view or phone view. First thing that's most common is notes will be added in terms of what's completed. There is text or audio to text feature. So if you're on a tablet or a phone, you could talk into the mic. It does a really good translation, which could be further edited, or you could simply type in here, work that was completed with any specific notes. Also, an option, a lot of companies will take advantage of this. You could set up specific, think of this as shortcuts to canned messages that you might want to insert as work performed. Something that's done often, and you just want, instead of the tech having to describe it each time, instead just picking off a list. There are also canned messages for the office or for the tech to communicate with the office. And an email could be sent right now, real time, to that person in the office. And they'll get an email, and that email will include a hyperlink right into the work order. Now, at the bottom, I just tapped on submit. That means now I've updated that work order with a description of work completed or notes that I'm taking on specific to that ticket. Notice it says 2 notes. There's 2 ways, moving on to capturing time, there's 2 ways to do it. You could either just log in hours, which we'll do. Let's do that first. I'm just going to add labor. It's defaulting with me. I obviously could have a helper with me and insert helper as well. In this case, I've got everybody accessed. I might only see 3 or 4 people there. But I'm just going to take my time. I'll say it's regular, and we'll go ahead and say 5 hours. And by the way, you have the ability to make this 5 hours at cost and maybe 5.5 at billable, because we don't have travel time included for some reason. Now, the tech might just record the 5, and the office would edit that prior to actual invoice. So let's just go ahead and save the labor. save and new would allow me to just insert another person without having to go back to this window a second time from the main screen. So I'll say that's okay. An alternate to logging time just by hours is to use what's called timestamping. Timestamping tracks traveling to that site as well as starting the call with a specific time. I'll go ahead and backdate this to time. By the way, that feature right here where I could change the time is a security feature, one of many. That's just a checkbox. Do you want the tech to actually edit time when he updates his timestamp? But the purpose of timestamps is to start the call, and then once started, when we go back, the next option would be, let me actually start the time update. So I've stamped that call with a start time of 10:45. When I close that, what's the next thing you could do? Either suspend the call or complete it. If I were to complete that, let's say 30 minutes later, it automatically calculates the time, and then posts that time from start to stop to the billing register for someone to review, approve, and create an invoice. So in this case, I've just logged in the 5 hours, but you could either use timestamping or just log hours. I'm going to skip the flat rate. This is for firms that do residential work. That's another conversation. Built in, there's different schedules you can import into our flat rate pricing, or you could build it on your own. Let's just touch on parts. And so what's a part? Well, material or part that's used. Notice that there's in all throughout SSO, there are Google type searches, whether it's a customer lookup, a piece of equipment, or in this case, materials. So this happens to be a material list or inventory list that we have stored inside the software. And I want my service person to simply type in wire. If they type in GR, well, everything with GR anywhere in it pops in. So very intuitive, very easy to use. Just picking any one of those, and I could choose multiple parts with that checkbox or just this one part, and I'll say 3. Now, pricing might not even be relevant to me, so I'm just going to skip that. We have price tables that could automatically insert that when we bill it. Notice as well at the bottom, it's defaulting the main stock. If you decide to turn truck stock on, each tech is assigned a truck, and the system, just by simply logging in parts used, will automatically reduce the inventory on hand for that truck. So we'll go ahead and just post that one wire item or part that we grabbed, and we'll just go back. One tap takes you back to this screen again. So we've logged some notes. We showed timestamping. We logged hours. We logged a part. There might be miscellaneous items that are not part of a parts database. You could log right here. Really the next step, this is common too. So let me touch on this real quick. You have the ability on a work order or on a quote, or frankly, almost anywhere to add attachments. Attachments are what? Pictures taken on a phone or a tablet, or in this case, because I'm demonstrating this on a laptop or a desktop rather, I'm actually, pulling up pictures right on my desktop. So I could insert a picture and then put a title on it, describe it, and even categorize it if you choose. So that attaches that picture to the work order so that when you click reports, it will go create now this is the service tech completing the call, logged everything in that was done, including what we fixed, and perhaps a before and after. They're going to then tap on create a pre-authorization, or it could be a physical form, work order form. This is customizable. This is out of the box standard. I've put a Sage logo in the left. This would be branded with your company. Notice that the work order number that we've assigned as soon as the call was taken. Remember the notes that we had logged in? I typed in simply type, and then I inserted that text. And then we've got an open and started. Now remember, I didn't actually check that it was completed. We'll do that in a minute. But here's the 3 of the green wire. And remember, there was no price, so it retrieved that automatically from the database. And obviously, there are tables that will be defined by customer if you choose, or by call type that could define the pricing automatically. Now, some of you might be looking at this saying, wait a minute, I don't want my customer to sign this with that pricing displayed. So I'm just signing this pretty loosely here. I'm signing it. Most residential firms show price. Most commercial companies hide all the pricing. So what's displayed is really what was completed, the material or materials and parts that were used, as well as time. Remember, I typed in 5 hours of time. I did not choose a rate, but behind the scenes, we have a rate attached to me as a tech that does the extension and calculates. So it's up to you whether you want pricing shown. This could be just something that the customer is authorizing based on what was attached. The signature is just captured. I have employee signatures turned on as an option as well. So that is the completion of the work order. If we go back, now again, if you choose to use timestamping, part of your protocol would be obviously for the tech to mark that as complete. And obviously it'll insert the current time. So we did a fast run on Sage Service Operations. I hope this was informative. There's so much more to cover, and we'd welcome an opportunity to get together in more detail on a more personalized presentation. Let me turn it back to Krista. Krista, are there any questions in the Q&A that I need to respond to now?
We have no questions right now. If you do have one, please type it into the questions box. We'll be happy to answer. Bobby just did such a great job that everyone has no questions.
It's a great tool. So you know, again, we didn't touch on the personalization of the tool and how each organization can define what it is they're actually tracking on mobile devices, and then how that interacts again with your back office application to eliminate all that double entry. So please reach out to us. Let me do this real quick and just turn this back. If you have questions, please reach out to me or call me. My extension is 101. I'm happy to take emails and respond and connect with each of you at whatever pace you'd like to run through this. So thank you, everybody, and please reach out if we can help you. Krista, if there's no questions, we'll close down the meeting.
That's it. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I will send out the recording later today as well. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay. Goodbye.